the Loh-Juh Trail. Before the group set off, their guide paused at the trailhead marker, a worn wooden post carved with the trail's name. "Before we begin," she said, turning to face the group, her voice easy and unhurried, "I want to share something. Loh-Juh," she tapped the post, "is a Muscogee word. It means turtle." She let that settle. The Muscogee people lived on this land for centuries. The turtle moves slowly, deliberately. It carries its home on its back. She smiled. "That's what this trail asks of you. Carry yourself gently. Take your time." A few people in the group nodded. Stephanie wrote the word in her mind. Loh-Juh, turtle. She thought there might be something in that. The Loh-Juh Trail in Alabama beckoned hikers every year. 5 miles of rolling hills and quiet valleys, known for leaving visitors calmer than when they arrived. Experienced hikers called it a short walk, a 2-hour breath of air. But Stephanie Williams planned to make the most of every second. She chose late winter, a season of transition, where the grass was just beginning to poke through pale, crunchy leaves, and the pine needle floor still held the bone-deep chill of January. It was cool enough for a second layer, yet early enough to escape the Alabama heat that punished anyone daring to hike past the spring equinox. When the group started, Stephanie intentionally drifted to the back. Usually she trailed behind to people watch for her writing, cataloging the way a stranger held their shoulders or the particular shape of someone's laugh. Characters were everywhere if you paid attention, but today was different and heavier. Her last 2 books had underperformed. The first, a quiet literary novel about a Haitian woman rebuilding her life in coastal Georgia, had earned respectful reviews and modest sales, the kind of book that wins a regional award and disappears. The second, a more commercial attempt at a thriller, had fared worse. Her editor had called it cautious, which Stephanie understood to mean she had written toward the market instead of toward the truth. Both sat on her shelf like small, polite failures. She needed her next book to be a breakthrough, but she couldn't push past the first paragraph. 13 rewrites in one morning, each one technically competent, each one dead on arrival. She knew the characters' names, she knew the city, she knew the inciting incident, but she couldn't find the heartbeat of it, the reason the story needed to exist. That was the moment she'd pushed away from her desk. Desperate for what her therapist called grass-touching therapy, the simple humbling act of being small in a large place. She suspected the block wasn't really about craft. It was about fear. The first book had been written with nothing to lose. The second had been written with one eye on the market. Now, trying to write a third with both failures behind her and a contract deadline ahead, she felt watched from every direction. She couldn't hear her own voice through the noise. Daniel Shen had come to Loh-Juh for similar reasons. He'd retied his shoes twice, checked his pockets, and rummaged through his bag, stalling until he was the last soul following the group. He'd hoped to be alone with his thoughts, but fate had other plans. He slowed his pace to keep his distance, but his natural stride eventually matched hers. When they realized they were walking in lockstep, they shared a look. And when their eyes met, both inhaled sharply and exhaled slowly. They didn't recognize each other, but something felt familiar, a recognition of shared exhaustion, perhaps. They looked away, cheeks warming, a post-walk smile already forming. Maybe it was the light splintering between the trees, or the soft, biting breeze. Maybe it was just the quiet they both desperately needed. Daniel was a dentist in a nearby city. He'd thought he'd do that work forever, until a guest spot on a friend's podcast about male loneliness changed everything. His comments had been logical, funny, and unexpectedly vulnerable. The episode went viral. He'd launched a media profile, then a second channel for skits. Both were monetized within 6 months. For the first time, he felt he was in his element. His girlfriend didn't agree. She wanted a traditional dentist husband, and she'd mocked his success as a little online hobby. In Daniel's mind, she had already written herself out of his story. He needed someone who understood the itch to create. The canopy thickened above them, filtering sunlight into long, dusty beams that snagged on the moss clinging to the ancient oaks. Below their feet, the trail softened, pine needles layered over decades into something almost cushioned. the earth exhaling a low, dark scent of root and rot and slow, patient time. Somewhere deeper in the trees, water moved over stone, barely audible, more felt than heard. Stephanie adjusted her pack. The distant chatter of the others faded into a dull hum, swallowed by the heavy, damp silence of the deep woods. Beside her, Daniel stepped over a protruding root with the exaggerated grace of a tightrope walker. He spoke first. Just in case the woods are more alive than we expect, my name's Daniel. He extended his hand. Stephanie, nice to meet you. She tilted her head. You think it's dangerous out here? Not snake dangerous, not yet anyway, but out here, everything is a predator. See that squirrel? That's not nature's mascot. That's a highly trained scout for the local tick militia. They've got my coordinates. They're probably radioing them in right now. Stephanie breathed out a laugh. At least the bears are still sleeping. We can hope. Hope he doesn't like Chinese food. She laughed again, glancing over at him. I brought granola bars and chips, he said with mock unease. But I may have just added seasoning. So if you're Chinese food, she said, am I soul food? Daniel inhaled, his eyes narrowing playfully. Is that coconut oil? Soul food, maybe. But if a bear finds us, he's calling it coconut shrimp. They kept talking, the trail narrowing as leaves and fallen branches obscured the path. Around them, the woods had shifted almost imperceptibly, the oaks growing older and wider, their roots surfacing like the knuckles of enormous hands, the light dimming to something green and underwater. A crow called out once, twice, and then was absorbed by the silence. The group was safely ahead, around the bend of the hill, but they were too preoccupied to notice. Stephanie's eyes suddenly narrowed, silencing Daniel's next rebuttal. He followed her gaze. Where are the others? She asked, a chill cooler than the breeze settling over her. Daniel scanned the trees. Silence. No voices, no snapping twigs. He set his bag down and pulled out a crinkled trail map. As he pointed out a landmark, Stephanie found herself leaning in close. She'd braced for the typical outdoorsy musk of sweat and earth, but instead, she met something crisp. He smelled of eucalyptus and faint white tea, the scent of a sterile clinical world. A tiny hint of spearmint lingered there too, not cheap gum, but sharp and professional. It was a clean that felt deliberate, a stark contrast to the mud caking their boots. Okay, Daniel said, tracing a jagged line. If my calculations are correct, and they usually aren't when there's no anesthesia involved, this trail leads to a waterfall, or a very large puddle. Maps are basically choose your own adventure books for people who like to get lost. Stephanie looked up, catching the firm curve of his jaw. A dentist and a comedian, she said. Do you tell jokes while your hands are in their mouths? Or do you wait until they can actually laugh? Oh, the captive audience is the best part, Daniel grinned, folding the map with a snap. There is no silence more profound than a man with 3 cotton rolls in his cheek, trying to figure out if I'm joking about his molar. I moved to Alabama because people here are polite enough to listen to my tight 5, even when I'm holding a high-speed drill. He started walking, lingering just long enough for her to catch up. Honestly, I once had a guy tell me his tooth only hurt when he played the banjo. I didn't even fix it. I just told him to switch to the mandolin, saved him a root canal, and improved the local music scene in one go. Stephanie laughed, the eucalyptus scent trailing behind him like a clean breeze. You're terrible. I'm a service provider, he countered, eyes crinkling. I provide health and I provide mediocre puns. It's a holistic approach. They followed the overgrown woods until they saw the first sign of civilization, an old tire near a partially dried stream. The stream caught the light where it still ran, a thin silver thread pulling itself over smooth stones, carrying dead leaves around a bend and out of sight. The whole scene had the quiet dignity of something that had been here long before them and would be long after. When the voices of the group finally carried through the wind, they shared a look of shared relief and perhaps a little regret that the solitude was over. The group watched them approach like redeemed exiles. Daniel and Stephanie rejoined the others, still grinning. Well, Daniel said softly, after that adventure, Do you feel unstuck? Will you be writing again soon? Yes, she said, and she meant it. And you? Did you find what you were looking for out here? Daniel looked at her a moment longer than necessary, drinking her in against the backdrop of the fading winter sun. Yeah, he breathed. I think I did. Thank you for watching Love Jolt Library. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking and subscribing.